NeoQor.
Hello, and welcome back to another NeoQor Tip Tuesday tutorial video. As always, it is me, NeoQor, and we are in the studio, so let's get to learning. So today we're going to be talking about compression for mastering. The last video we talked about the basics of compression and how it can be used to benefit your mixdown by giving your individual sounds more loudness, clarity in the mix, and ultimately lending to a more consistent level on your master channel. So why do we need a more consistent level on your master channel? Well, let's say you finish mixing your track and you got that one sound that's just causing your whole master channel to spike way up. So as you may know, when you're mastering, you want to make your track louder. And in order to make your track louder, you have to A, compress the peaks, and then B, raise the gain. So let me go ahead and show you what I use when I master. And one of the tools that I use is the Fruity Limiter. This guy right here. If you saw the last video, then you'll remember this tool. The only difference is when I master, instead of using the compressor tool in the Fruity Limiter, this guy right here, I use, boom, here, this guy, the limiter portion of the Fruity Limiter. So what is the difference? Well, with the compressor portion, anything that passes over the blue line here will be compressed down depending on how you have the ratio set, right? So if you turn the ratio this way, it's going to be much harder compression. You turn it back this way, it's going to be much softer compression. The same goes with the knee, right? When you compress using the compressor portion of the Fruity Limiter, the signal will still pass over that threshold, just not at as high as an amplitude. So this threshold is not going to block signal from passing over it completely. It's just going to compress it a little more, so those peaks are going to be a little less dramatic. With a true limiter, like what we have here, any signal that passes over this green line, also known as the ceiling, is stopped. It does not go past it. It is totally compressed. I like to think of this green line as Gandalf. So any signal that goes past it, the green line says, "You shall not pass." Nothing goes past it. It is like a brick wall. It stops any signal. It compresses it completely. So what happens when we raise the gain on a track with a sound that spikes way up? So I'm going to go ahead and show you. So I'm going to turn this compressor off here, and I'm just going to use the limiter part of the Fruity Limiter, right? So I'm going to use this project that I have here. It's a work in progress. It's not completely done, but the levels are not 100% consistent, so it's a perfect example for me to show you what happens when you have a sound that spikes up. Right, so go ahead and play it. So you can see, what am I doing right now? I'm basically just keeping the ceiling where it's at, raising the gain. So I'm just driving the signal up into the ceiling. After a certain point, because you got these little spikes here, the signal starts to compress really hard, and that brick wall starts to squash the signal. So as you can see, having one sound that spikes your master channel up is going to limit the amount of gain you can give your master channel signal without causing a compressor to squash that peak and cause a weird kind of ducking effect. If you turn the gain up too high on a limiter and drive it too much into the ceiling, it's going to get kind of a weird, you may get a weird ducking effect, or you may just get like kind of a weird like crunchiness, because you're going to have the signal's going to be compressing and it's going to be going up and down. It's just not going to sound good. Also, side note, you want to make sure that you do this on the loudest part of your track. So you wonder why I have this section here looped when I'm doing this, because this is the loudest part of the track that I have so far, right? So hypothetically, if this was a complete track and I was mastering it and this was the loudest part of my track, this is the part that I would use to master the song. Because if you're not doing it that way and you're maxing out your gain on a quieter part, then you're going to be ruining your sound when a louder part comes in and drives way past the ceiling of the limiter and just gets totally smashed. So we use compression during our mixdown to prevent something like that happening. If our individual sounds don't have any weird spikes or peaks, then we're less likely to see that when we put everything together. There are other tools that can be used for mastering, such as a multiband compressor, in which you compress certain frequency bands differently. I personally like to use Maximus for that, but I don't actually use the compression function of Maximus per se. I use the soft saturation function for mastering with that. So I'm not going to include that in this video because that's not what I use it for is not technically compression, but it is another way of reducing peaks. So if you want to learn more about that, I could definitely make a complete mastering video to show you my exact mastering chain. Just let me know, and I can do something like that in the future. But I'm going to go ahead and show you another compression tool that's great for mastering, and that is the maximizer, specifically in Ozone Elements 8. So that's a really powerful tool, and I'm going to go ahead and pull it up right now. So if you don't know what a maximizer is basically just another way of saying reduce peaks, increase gain, right? So with the Ozone 8 maximizer, which is this guy right here, you set the ceiling like with the limiter. It's a brick wall, but instead of a gain knob that you drive into the ceiling, you have a threshold, and that threshold sets a level at which everything above it is boosted or maximized, and then of course the ceiling in this case sets the level at which the signal is not allowed to pass. And that's really the core of what mastering is. So let me go ahead and show you how this works. I'm going to go ahead and disable the limiter, turn on Ozone 8 elements. We're just going to use the maximizer, so I'm going to turn all the other things off. There's a stereo imager, and an equalizer on this thing too, which are also really great, but for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to show you the maximizer. So we want to set the ceiling. I usually set the ceiling at -0.1 because if I set it at 100% at unity, there's still a danger of it clipping just a little bit, and then when I export it into another audio software, it'll read it as clipping, and so I don't want to do that. So just to be safe, I set it at -0.1 dB. So, and then I'm going to adjust the threshold. I'm going to set the character to 0.60, about, yeah, let's do 0.6. So that's usually what I set it at because it's quick compression, quick attack, quick release. And then we'll go ahead and play it again. So you can see that it's getting pretty squashed right here. That screech really needs some taming. Of course, this is a work in progress, so it's still, you know, nothing's perfect. But again, that just goes to show you the importance of having a really consistent master channel, especially on the loudest part of your track. But it still sounds pretty decent, and that's why I love this plugin, because you can drive it pretty hard without getting a lot of nasty, weird distortion sounds or artifacts or something like that. So I'm going to leave the threshold there. That's a pretty good place. So I'm going to go ahead and use that, and then what I'll do now is turn the limiter back on, and then we're going to limit it. We're going to set the ceiling at 0, and we're going to reset the gain. We're going to zero the gain out, and then we're just going to drive the gain into the ceiling here, and we're not going to drive it too hard, but we're just going to slightly, just barely compress those little extra peaks that are left, and see how it sounds. So I'm going to go ahead and play it now. You may want to turn your volume down because it's just going to keep getting louder and louder. So now you see, look, like it's pretty squared off. I mean, we've got a pretty girthy waveform, and it's a lot louder. And, you know, that's, like I said, that's really the core of what mastering is. There are other steps in mastering I can get into that aren't compression, but the main elements of mastering are always reduce peaks, increase gain. So that's compression for mastering, guys. I hope this video has been valuable for you. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, just drop them in the comments below or email me at neoqor@gmail.com. You can also get in touch with me on Facebook and Instagram. So I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week for another Tip Tuesday video. Peace.